Every night at around 2 in the morning, I'd walk down the hallway and use the washroom. It's become a routine before going to bed. I live in a dormitory, so I would pass by the other rooms to reach the end of the hallway. Most of my neighbors would be asleep by then. However, sometimes I would hear banging noises and see the lights flicker as I walked past room 204. I would get goosebumps and the hairs on my body would stand on end. I've never seen who lives in that room, and I never want to. One night, as I walked down the hallway, I started to hear banging and muffled screaming. Immediately I thought to myself, "It's just 204. Don't worry about it. Just keep going." As I got closer and closer, the banging and screaming got louder. My heart started to beat faster and I started to sweat. My hands and feet began to shake. I was breathless, like I just ran a marathon. But for some reason, I couldn't stop. No, my legs just went one foot after the other until I stood right in front of room 204. Then the noises stopped. I froze. The silence was deafening and I could hear my heartbeat in my ears. Suddenly, beside my left ear, I heard a soft voice say, "Run." I bolted to the washroom thinking that I was too scared to turn around and face whoever or whatever was behind me. I locked the door and started to cry and scream for someone to help. I shivered. I was cold. I wasn't ready to die. I didn't want to die. I hear footsteps. It's standing on the other side of the door. I could feel it. It had come for me. The doorknob slowly turned, and the door slowly opened. I looked around me. It's so bright, so peaceful. But then, the white lights started to flash. The white lights slowly turned red. I felt a hot sensation dripping down my face. And in 3, 2, 1, I took my last breath. "Good morning," I said as I saw her face. "You look beautiful as always." She smiled. "This woman in front of me is amazing. She's the love of my life. We've been together all our lives. One could even say that she's my other half. We were both pretty strong and independent women. We didn't care what others thought of us. We lived our lives the way we wanted to. We were different, but happy. However, one night, all that changed. She was on her phone scrolling through her social media feed, and insecurity started to set in. Looking at all these beautiful young ladies with amazing features, all she saw were flaws in herself. Finally having enough, she went under the knife. Bit by bit, her body changed. She went from an A cup to a D, a size 10 to a 0, and from $20 on her face to $2,000 all over. After it all, it was like she was a completely different person. The woman I wake up to every morning wasn't there anymore. For a minute I thought to myself, I'll love her no matter what. As long as she's happy, then I'm happy. But was she? You know, happy? No. Her insecurities grew more and more. The prettier she got, the more it wasn't enough. The more flaws she saw, the more she wanted to fix it. It was like a drug. She wanted it. She needed it. It had become her life. She didn't know where to stop or when to stop. She was too far gone. I had lost her. All those times I reached out with my hand, but she wouldn't take it. She'd slap it away and ask me to help her fix another thing. We fought day and night 24/7. At one point, I just had enough. I looked her in the eye and said, "There will be no turning back." A few years passed. I woke up. "Good morning, beautiful." I didn't smile. I haven't smiled in years. I got up and got ready for my day. I put on my makeup, did my hair, wore my clothes. But they were all wrong. These are not, if they're not perfect, I'm not perfect. I'm never going to be perfect. I looked in the mirror and held out my hand. "Help me." As I walk through town, I put up my hood and wear my mask. It's summer, and I'm sweating buckets. Close your eyes. Close your eyes. Last summer, I woke up in the middle of the night, realizing that I couldn't talk. I touched my lips, and slowly it hit me. My lips, they're stitched up. I panicked. I tried shouting. I tried ripping my mouth open, but nothing worked. I ran to my parents' room and woke them up. I stared into their eyes, begging for help, but something was wrong. They looked confused. No, they looked scared. My own parents were afraid of me. That very same night, I packed my bags and decided to live on my own. I'm a monster. Everybody would look at me and run away. I have to find a solution, a cure, something, anything. I can't live like this. For years, I've searched online, read books, and went to see doctors. They were all useless. They didn't even bother examining me. They looked at my face and would tell me nothing was wrong, and would just politely ask me to leave every single time. They'd advise me to go see a specialist, but they were all crazy. They blabbed about how there was nothing there and that they didn't see a thing. How can they not see anything? I looked in the mirror and my stitched up mouth is all I can see. Finally, I've had enough. I threw a fit in a doctor's office. They tried to hold me down, but in the midst of the struggle, I was able to get hold of a pair of scissors from the doctor's desk. I gripped it tightly, held it up to my face, and excitedly tried to cut my mouth open. But before I could do anything, they stopped me. They held me down to the floor and finally admitted me to a psychiatric hospital. Apparently, I was mental. But I knew I wasn't. I wasn't like those other people. Although, I did pretend to be better to get out of that hellhole. After a year, they finally discharged me. And now, I live my life just like everybody else. Don't get me wrong, my mouth is still stitched up, so I wear a mask. But this time, unlike before, I love the attention. I guess that place did help me learn something after all. I was made to be irresistible. People around me would be mesmerized and would want to be my friend. They'd always come and ask me to make them a part of me, by ripping a part of their own soul and offering them to me. I'd eat them, and they would be able to see and feel a fraction of what I experience. I guess you could say that we are all connected. However, it's not all glitz and glamour, I filter out the bad ones and only show them the good ones. The bad ones, these are experiences that I can't show them. I can't. Every morning, my fans would line up outside my house with their souls wrapped in tiny presents. I would hear them chant my name from my bedroom window. My fans are all young adults, and so I was stricken with fear when I heard a little girl's voice. Amongst the crowd, there was a young girl smiling brightly with hazel eyes. My heart sank. "Go away, quickly!" I yelled and screamed at her to get away and to stay back. The other people saw me do this, but they were too enraptured by me that they didn't mind. I saw the girl turn around and run back home, sobbing. I quickly took a look behind me to check if he noticed. Oh no. I laid out the souls in an empty room and stood by the corner as he walked out and examined every soul. The ones he liked, he gave them a lick and sucked them dry. He particularly liked the younger ones, said they were more fresh and vibrant. It was his ecstasy. I could see him get a high after eating them. With every lick, I could feel his bloodlust all the way from where I stood. I knew he wanted more. My heart was pounding. My hands were shaking uncontrollably. He knows. We flew out the window and headed straight to find more souls. One by one, he'd sneak up on them and hold them up by their necks and suck their souls out. After a few, we usually go back home. But this time, it was different. He was hungrier. It felt like he was looking for something. I saw his pupils dilate as if he found his prey. He found the hazel-colored soul he was longing for. In a flash, he darted inside the room and stood over her sleeping body. He got closer and closer to her face. He took her by the neck, and digging his long, sharp nails, he lifted her up. I stepped in a few minutes after he left, and all I see is a tiny piece of soul barely holding on. I'm sorry, little one. I took the last piece and put it in my mouth.
The man sitting across the table from me poured his tea in a cup. An orderly comes by and hands the man a cup of pills and said, "Okay, Walter, here are your meds for the day. Make sure to take all of them." And he proceeded to walk away. With a shaky hand, he empties the contents of the cup onto his palm. I noticed an assortment of pills, mostly in muted colors, except for one bright blue gel capsule that stood out from the rest. He popped a mass of pills into his mouth and washed it down with his tea. In a few seconds, he reclined in his seat and started to close his eyes. His hands would grow steady on the armrests, his breathing would begin to slow, and I'd notice him drift off to a deep sleep. I noticed he started to have this warm smile across his face, which was so infectious that I could not help but start smiling as well. I said to myself that I should ask him what it was he was dreaming of when he wakes up. So as he fell asleep, I decided to take my leave and come back in about an hour to check up on him. I was getting close to about an hour, so I decided to check back in when I noticed he wasn't in his chair. I thought to myself, Maybe he got up early and decided to walk around. Then suddenly, I heard a splash, followed by a scream. Then there he was, inside the pool, struggling and gasping for air. I rushed to the pool and dove in to save him. I dragged him out as he coughed and spat water out of his lungs. I rubbed his back to help him and said, "It's all right. You're all right. Everything is okay." I started to see his breathing go back to normal, and he started to calm down. A crowd already formed around us, and I quickly told them that everything was okay, and that I would take care of Walter and see him to the infirmary. I asked him what happened, and he said the last thing he remembered was falling asleep and having a dream. Then the next thing he knew, he was drowning in the pool. As we got to talking, he explained that his dreams would always take him back to the time when his lovely wife and 2 beautiful children went to have a picnic by the lake. His wife would get her guitar and start playing and singing this wonderfully serene melody.
His children would go near the lake and play around near the water,
splashing each other as they laughed. He would then find himself start grilling on a barbecue. Mouth-watering fumes would waft from the grill and drift along the picnic site. It was just the loveliest time. They would spend half the day just enjoying the serene lakeside view and landscape. And in the late afternoon, the whole family would go into the lake for some swimming. The children would go ahead and jump into the lake first, followed by his wife, and finally he'd take off his shoes and dive into the cold, refreshing lake. They would swim further and further until they'd reach the center and start to float a bit, when suddenly, one of the kids would be pulled underwater. Both him and his wife would panic and start calling out to him, "Josh, Josh." They'd swim towards Wendy when, just as suddenly, Wendy gets dragged down as well. Struggling, Wendy tries to stay above water, but the force was just too much and it drags her down into the depths. His wife, who was near their children at that time, went underwater to try to rescue their kids. He ducked underwater to try and see what was happening, but all he could see was a cold, dark mass that was the depths of the lake. When he came up for a breath, he found out that he was the only one left. He had lost sight of his whole family. He'd stare at the darkness beneath him. Then out of the depths, he sees hands reach out to grab him. He'd struggle and try to break free, but the hands bound his hands and feet together as they dragged him deeper and deeper into the water. He starts hearing voices say, "Help me. Dad, help me. Walter, something's pulling me down. Join us." After that last line, he'd find himself near a body of water, or nearly drowning. I paused at his question and my eyes drifted to the pool. I started to think of my wife that passed away. It was still fresh enough in my memory that I remembered how it all happened. I shook myself out of that thought and looked back at Walter when he was staring at the ground when he suddenly said, "Have you lost somebody?" I saw his face inches from mine, his eyes expressionless and his mouth drawn to a thin line. His breathing slowed and he spoke. "You have lost someone, haven't you?" A weird, sinister tone starting to come up in his voice. "Finally, I've found one." His voice so ecstatic with pleasure that was so different from the man I met just a few minutes ago. I started to ease back when his arms shot out and grabbed me by the neck. He pinned me down with some ungodly strength that I didn't know he had. I tried to break free, but his knees pinned me down and he sat on my chest. The next thing I knew, he had a blue pill in his hand. The same blue pill I saw he drank this morning. I have waited so long, So long to finally break free of this curse. He laughed from the top of his lungs. I was about to say something when he jabbed his hand down my throat, force-feeding me the pill. He pulled out his hand and clamped my mouth shut as I struggled to not swallow. However, the lack of air started to get to me, and I involuntarily swallowed the pill and then started to see my vision begin to blur. Slowly, faces turned to shapes. Shapes turned into blobs of color, and the next thing I knew, I was out. I woke to the sound of a mallet hitting a table, a repetitive thud echoing in my ears as I slowly came to. I looked around and I was in my apartment. I found myself sitting on the couch with a beer in my hand and the TV in front of me. I saw my wife, my dead wife, as she was the night of her death, in the kitchen, making dinner. I looked over and saw her lips moving, but I couldn't hear any of the words coming out of her mouth. I tried to draw closer. Then suddenly her eyes darted in my direction. Her gaze was so intense that I felt as though she could see right through my fear. Holding the hammer in one hand, the sound of her red heels echoed as she came towards me. I started to stumble back. "Why are you running away, honey? Are you gonna hit me again? Huh? Are you?" She walked up until she was standing right in front of me. She swung her hammer and hit the wall behind me as I dodged to the right. I frantically crawled out of the way, trying to escape. She would swing wildly with her hammer, hitting everything that came between me and her. I ducked out for most of the swings, but sadly, I soon found myself backed up into a corner. She towered over me with her menacing presence and brought her hammer up into the air, getting ready to kill me. I have to get out of here, I thought to myself. I have to wake up. She's gonna kill me. At the last minute, I found the cord to the lamp and yanked it hard. The lamp fell and hit her on the head, knocking her unconscious. The lamp smashed and the scattered paper started to catch on fire. I didn't think and I just made a run for it. I ran out into the cold, rainy evening and then I woke up in the afternoon surrounded by a crowd of people. I looked around to see if my wife was anywhere around me. I let out a sigh of relief as they covered me with blankets and tried to help me up. We walked back inside, and as they sat me down, I found a blue pill in my hand, and I heard a voice say, "I'll see you again tonight." Our first soul today. Let's see. Well, I see this is, just a facade. Come on, tell me, who are you, really?
Where am I? Who are you? What is this?
Oh, this all must be very confusing for you, huh? Okay, let me explain. You're dead. You've been murdered by an ex-lover, thrown over a cliff, your body eaten by a pack of wolves. And now here you are, standing trial in front of me. So tell me, why should or shouldn't you be sent to hell?
Well,
Well, go on. There is a huge line behind you. Get on with it. Why don't we start with the one who killed you?
Okay. Well, I was engaged to the love of my life. We were together for 6 years.
However, just recently I broke it off because I found out that he was cheating on me. And I'm guessing it was because of that I was unjustly murdered. There is no reason for me to go to hell. There is. What? Go on. Tell me everything. I was a good person. I've never done anything bad. I've never cheated or lied. I did. I didn't. I loved him and only him. I've never even talked to other guys. I have. Lots and lots of them. What? What is happening? That's not me. Actually, it is coming from you. The real you. You see, in this trial, no matter how much you lie, the truth will always come out. I'm not lying. I swear. If you're not lying, then can you tell me who these are? I don't. Peter. Nice guy, isn't he? He was about to marry his childhood sweetheart, but you just had to take advantage of him when he was passed out, didn't you? James. Oh, poor guy. He didn't even know that you made his wife file a divorce just so you can come and swoop in, to then just dump him soon after. And don't get me started on John. Oh, poor soul. Would you like me to continue? No. You just lust after every person you meet, don't you? You sad, sad soul. Not only are you lustful, but your temper is nothing to scoff at. I didn't do anything wrong. All I did was give the guys what they wanted. I was just doing charity work. Oh, charity work, my. Okay, fine. Alright, fine. It's true. I'm using what the guys up there had given me. It's to cheer up the lonely people in the world. If I haven't done any of those, they would have all died sad and alone. I'm their savior. Can't you see? I am their savior. Yes, well, try saving yourself now. Go through that door on your left, and I give you my blessing. Are there any guys in there? I gotta save them. Hey, are you listening? Are there any guys in there? Wait. Well, what if there's none? Oh, no. No, I gotta save somebody. I gotta save somebody. Ugh, what a soul. Next! Hello there. Tell me, who are you, really? It is once again the time of year when happiness and joy are brought upon people. Families would gather and have a festive dinner. Christmas carolers would knock on doors and sing with the joys of the holidays. And children would be laying out milk and cookies, waiting for Santa to come. But little did everybody know that this year would be different. This year, Krampus is coming to town. Mommy, it's almost time for Christmas. We have to hurry and bake Santa cookies. I can't wait. I will stay up all night and make sure to meet him this year. The little girl hurried towards the kitchen, her mother not far behind. She put on her apron and got to work. Soon, the kitchen was filled with the sweet scent of melting chocolate and warm cookie dough. As she waits for the cookies to bake, She decided to go out in the forest and pick some winter berries to make it more special. She made her way through the snow-covered forest, but then she noticed a series of quick and tiny footsteps following her. A shadow lurked behind the trees. She slowly turned to see what was there. Then she saw two glowing eyes staring back at her from the shadows. Her heart raced and she took off. She decided to pick up a broken branch as she ran and tried her best to not look back. She ran and ran as fast as she could, and when she got the chance, she turned around, gripping the branch tightly, swung it as hard as she could. She beats it a few more times to make sure it's dead, then throws the branch next to its dead body. She wipes her hands on her coat and continues her search for the winter berries.
Found him! Santa is going to love them.
She runs towards the kitchen and was stopped by her mother, who questioned her bloody coat.
Oh, sorry, Mummy. I pinched some berries too hard and got its juice all over me. I'll go get change right now.
Her mom warns her to be careful because the berries are poisonous, but she brushes it off and goes upstairs. She heads to her bedroom and took her coat off. A cold wind blows in from her window. There, she saw a crow sitting on the windowsill. Stupid bird. She walks towards it and slowly reached for its neck. The startled little girl staggered back and fell to the floor. Angrily, she changed her clothes and went back downstairs. She spends the rest of the night right by the fireplace, playing with dolls while singing Christmas songs. It was almost midnight, and her parents decided to go to bed, leaving her by herself.
You better watch out. You better not cry. You better not pout. I'm telling you why. Santa Claus is coming to town.
A cold gust of wind swoops down their chimney and blows the fire out. The lights flickered off. The only light came from the moon through the enormous window pane. Then she heard it. The twinkling sound. She was so gleeful that Santa was here that she hid behind the couch to surprise him. She looked intently at the fireplace, waiting for Santa to drop. But then suddenly, she noticed that it wasn't bells she was hearing, but the sound of chains rattling. Then, soon after, she started hearing slow stomps, one after another. Then it appeared. Horns. The shadow of horns starting to appear from the moonlight being cast through the window. With heavy footsteps, it walked towards the door. The little girl, too scared to move, just stared at the door as the stomps got closer and closer. The door swung open with a force that shook the whole house. As it stood there, the little girl got to see the beast. Hooved legs as thick as tree trunks, horns that grew and spiraled from the top of its head, chains that wrapped around the fur of its body, dragging on the floor as he moved. The face was mostly in shadows, except for the eyes. She noticed these were the same eyes she saw staring back at her in the woods. It looks at her with its piercing, blood-thirsting eyes, and as if from thin air, hands her a gift. She reluctantly accepted and opened the present. The gift revealed its contents to be the remains of small dead animals. Her eyes widened, and before she could even scream, the beast grabbed her by her feet, puts her in his sack, and dragged her out of the house. It dragged her a few kilometers through the snow. Her body got bruised and she felt cuts all over. It was 30 degrees below zero that night, and as she was about to pass out, she heard the beast punch a hole through the ground and jump in, dragging her weightless body to the underworld. Welcome to Krampus's lair. The barely conscious little girl looked through a hole in the sack and saw several children locked up in cages, their hands and feet chained together, and their neck bound in piping hot metal chains. She heard them screaming from their parents, begging Krampus to spare their lives. The beast just laughed as if it is enjoying their cries for help. Then the beast stopped, grabbed the little girl's head, and lifts her out of the sack. It looks at her soulless face, smiles, and chains her up just like the rest. Right beside her, she sees a child of about the same age, with a brand on his back. Violence. Theft. As she slowly read the words, his head turns to face her. Ah! She felt a burning sensation across her back. Animal cruelty, it read. The sight of the hot piping iron made the young girl pass out. The screaming of another child woke her up. Screamed another. Then she blacked out once again. The young girl wakes up for the second time that night. As she felt her chain being pulled, the crying and screams of other children began to fade, as if she was being dragged into another room. When the dragging stopped, she ventured to get up and look around. The young girl found herself in the middle of the snow-covered forest near her house. She looked around and started walking. A shadow zips behind her and startled her. Who's there? The shadow jumps out and a tiny squirrel stands by her feet. She lets out a sigh of relief, and subconsciously, a sudden rage rushes through her body. With a branch gripped tightly in her hand, she lifts her arm up and she blacks out and wakes up with blood gushing out down her back. She looks at her bloodied coat, and the crow by the windowsill catches her eye. The crow stares at her as if mocking her, and then she leapt towards it and she falls to the floor and wakes up again. After countless tries, the young girl finally caught on. After dinner, she puts the milk and cookies on top of the table by the Christmas tree, making sure the berries sit right in the middle of the plate.
You better watch out. You better not cry. You better not pout. I'm telling you why. Santa Claus is coming for me.
Hello, Santa. Would you like some berries?